Welcome to another Business Spotlight, where we share reflections, lessons, insights, and pearls of wisdom from local business owners. My name is Kerry James. I'm a business coach and facilitator. And on this afternoon's Business Spotlight, I am delighted to welcome Katie Stabler, founder of Cultivate. Good afternoon to you, and great to have you on, Katie.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So Cultivate, please do tell us more. How long have you been in business, please? And what do you specialize in?
So Cultivate is a customer experience consultancy. So as it says on the tin, the focus is very much on how to support organizations to deliver a great customer experience, which is actually a lot harder than it sounds, as you probably know as a customer yourself. And I've been in business for just past 3 years now. So I've worked explicitly in customer experience for a decade, but I've been running my own consultancy for just over 3 years.
Great. So who would be an ideal customer then? What sort of size, shape, industry, culture? What might be an ideal customer for you, would you say, Katie?
So I have the great fortune to work across many different industries, all different shapes and sizes. So I currently work globally, and that's the benefit of working from home and in my industry. And I work with all kinds of different organizations, from telecoms to retail to ICT. I've also worked a lot with not-for-profit. So my background, mixed in with customer experience, actually is in the world of finance, quite heavily related to debt. So I've worked with the local Citizens Advice Bureau, smaller charities, independents. I think ultimately, if I could put a shorter answer on that, anybody who has a customer would benefit from a customer experience consultancy.
Excellent. So just give us a bit of detail then, please, Katie. How do you go about engaging with your clients and mapping out the customer experience? What sort of process do you take your clients through?
Typically speaking, it would start with some form of assessment. So unless the organization that I'm working with or the company that I'm working with has a really good grasp on what their customer experience looks and feels like, or they're aware of particular problem areas that they want to focus on. For example, one of those could be, I know that my customers are trying to tell me things, but I don't know how to take the data that I collect and turn it into usable insight. So unless there's something specific like that, I would typically start with a bit of a generic assessment just to understand, what is the company doing at the moment in respect of customer experience? What kind of data and insight are they collecting? How are they using it? Where are they on the maturity level? And I would help them to identify where their gaps are and what they need to do. And most companies, unless you're a larger organization, don't tend to have anybody explicitly dedicated on customer experience. Particular smaller companies, it's quite holistic. It kind of just comes naturally. It's part and parcel of what you do. You want to hope that you're always delivering a good customer experience, but our perception of delivering a good customer experience and actually giving our customers a good customer experience can often be at odds with each other.
Okay, so let's step back a little bit. We're living, where are we? Kind of coming towards the end of 2023. The last 3 years have been strange and interesting from many perspectives, from lockdown through digital revolution, through home working, through interest rates, inflation rates, all the rest of it. And I guess that has impacted on consumer behavior in a range of ways. So how has all that affected your industry and your business, would you say?
It's made things harder, for sure. So I think, prior to the pandemic, customers, or I should say organizations, had a relatively good grasp on consumer behavior. There were trends, there were certain ways that our individual customers behaved and acted, and we could kind of rely on that. I'm not to say that there aren't nuances and there aren't always changes and evolutions, but there was a sense of general understanding. And then, as you say, the pandemic hit, the global crises that we'll see hit, the massive step forward in automation and AI. So much has changed that all of a sudden our customers, our consumers, are faced with so many different facets of life and of technology advancements that actually so much has changed, and so much has changed so quickly that we've lost a little bit of sight with regards to who our customers are and what they want and what they experience. So I think it's become harder, just in the sense that so much has changed. We're still catching our tail to truly understand, what do our customers want?
Okay, interesting. So What would you say, maybe linked to that strongly, maybe not, maybe there's some other things. What would you say are the main challenges you've got today in relation to your businesses with respect to where you are now and where you're trying to get to?
Do you know, it would be the evolution of the digital age that we're in. So the automation is such a big conversation in the world of customer experience now, and there's very few companies that aren't embracing digital experience, and the way in which that's changing, it's proposing so many different opportunities for companies that I work with don't know or don't understand what kind of technology is available to them and where they should start. And it's very sexy, there's lots of fun things that you can use, and you hear about all these things that you should be doing. There's so much choice that the companies I'm working with are struggling to identify actually what's the right thing for them. So the biggest, not if challenge is the right word, but I think the biggest thing that I'm facing with the customers I work with right now is really just helping them to take a step back and almost ignore the technology that is available and just consider what is the problem. So what solution are we trying to fix? And then what if technology is the right answer, what technology should we then use to bring in to fix that problem, rather than just jumping straight into the tech that's available.
How much of a challenge is it to you in terms of being not necessarily an expert, but at least aware of how the technology applies, particularly when it comes to different industries? You think something like AI, it affects different industries in many different ways. So is it a challenge for you to keep up?
Exactly.
How does that translate?
It just means that well, as you say, keep up. There's so much out there. It's moving so quickly. It's for me, I don't work necessarily with sponsored partners, but if I'm going into a company that is going to be utilizing some form of technology, which ultimately is always the case, especially when we're talking about either service delivery, so through the use of chatbots, for example, or if we're talking about collecting data and insight through the use of insight platforms, there is always a need to be able to help my customers understand what's the right thing for them. So the challenge for me is to make sure I know what's available at the right cost points, what they offer to a reasonable enough degree that I can then propose these solutions back to them. So I don't need to know everything, of course, I couldn't possibly, but I do need to have a good grasp of what's available and what's coming next.
So you mentioned insight platforms. That's certainly of interest for me. At one point in my career, I was running workshops on client insight generation. So to talk us through insight platforms, how does that work and how does that benefit your clients?
So again, depending on the size of the company that I'm working with, there's nothing wrong with a good Excel spreadsheet still. So if that's the kind of resources that you're working with, maybe you're small, maybe you don't need a big fancy platform, then Excel still works. But then there are the go up in grades. So there's so many different options, should I say, out there for survey generation. So you can send out surveys to your customers and get that insight back, and depending on the level that you're willing to expend on something like that, not only is it just a survey platform, but it actually will use things like conversational analytics to pull out all of the sentiment analysis and provide you with a lovely wrapped up bundle of insight as opposed to data. So it takes all that hardship away from you having to manually read through all of the qualitative feedback and understand what your customers are trying to tell you, look for themes, find root cause analysis. The platforms can do that for you, but of course it depends on your needs as a company, your resources available, and ultimately what you want to get from that.
Yes, interesting. Fond memories of having discussions about the difference between insight, knowledge, wisdom, and data.
Yes, we're very good normally. Most companies I work with are very, very good at collecting data, less so using it, and not for any particular reason. The reasons are vast and fall into many different categories, but we're good at collecting it, we're not great at using it.
Absolutely. Very interesting stuff. So Katie, in terms of aspirations for Cultivate, where, in terms of size and shape and other key dimensions, where do you see Cultivate in 3 to 5 years?
So I'd love to continue to broaden the range of industries that I work within. A personal challenge really is just to continue to grow that so that my experience is broad. I think that's one of the great benefits of customer experience is, like we said right at the beginning, it applies to any business which has a customer, which is most. Although there's general themes of customer experience, there are nuances to all of the different industries that you work within. So personal aspiration of mine is to continue to grow that. I'd certainly like to develop more in the world of hospitality. That's something I haven't explored an awful lot, but I've got a really strong desire to get into that sector. So if you're working in the world of hospitality and you'd like a customer experience consultant, there we go. But other than that, well, no, they are. That's my aspiration, really, to continue to expand, learn, grow, practice.
And in terms of resourcing your business, what's the model there? Do you use partners? Do you see yourself recruiting more employees? How's that going to develop over time, do you think?
The world of customer experience from a professional perspective is small. The community is fantastic, but it's you know everybody. So that's a huge benefit, because it means that as a consultancy like myself, I am just a one-man band. But when I work on larger projects, there's a fantastic network of consultants of all different niches who are all very happy to collaborate and work together. So I tend to subcontract mostly, depending on the project, and the subcontracting needs can vary hugely from people who are way more specific and focused on insight than I am, people who are UX designers, that comes really heavily with the world of CX. Marketing niche as well is a strong one that I tend to connect with quite strongly. But I'm very fortunate that we work in a community where that kind of resource is available. So subcontracting tends to be where I tend to pull most of my additional resource needs from.
Okay, so moving on then to most of the business spotlight viewers, of course, will be business owners. So what are your reflections and what would you say your key lessons are from launching and running your own business, Katie? What advice might you give yourself if you were starting again?
Without a shadow of a doubt, it is who you know. Connections. Cannot scream the benefits of a strong network. Most of my client engagements have come through recommendations of people I've worked with previously, current clients, other industry professionals within my sector who recommend each other. Networking. I know it's maybe a little bit cliched and overused, but I personally, the last 3 years, the most valuable skill that I have taken away from my practice is to build a strong network, get out there, communicate, talk to people, make sure they know you exist, but also that they see what you can do.
And so what sort of networking opportunities do you take? Are they quite specialist in certain areas, or are they relatively broad? Is it the Chamber of Commerce? What type of networking communities have you been part of then, Kate?
So I tend to be quite explorative. So I'm happy to try and do things and find out what works for me. The Chamber of Commerce is a big one. There are also very small local groups in my area, which I'll go along to. I also, I suppose, do a different kind of networking. So just last month and this month, I'm hosting the day events for the UK and International Customer Experience Awards. So although it might not feel just from saying that that's naturally networking, what it does for me is mean that I'm promoted on a very big scale, but also at those events get to meet with companies who would benefit and have an interest, a very clear interest, because they're customer experience awards, in my business. So I would try and look for networking opportunities, definitely which have the name in the title, networking events, but also just places where you can promote yourself and also connect with other businesses who might have some synergy with your own.
Very good. Excellent. Well, it's been great to hear your story and your reflections, Katie. One last question, if I may. Do you have any announcements or offers you'd like to make to the Business Spotlight viewers today?
Yes, so as I mentioned, one of the first steps from my engagement with a new client would be to do that initial analysis. So what does your current customer experience engagement look like? Where are your gaps? What might you need? So I'm offering a free initial consultation, which is a light overview as to what you're currently doing now and what you maybe could do to improve your customer experience focus moving forward.
And what might be the next step if somebody's interested in that then, Katie?
Feel free to contact me directly. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. My email or telephone number should also be available to you. Just reach out, mention that you've perhaps seen this interview, and be very happy to get that initial consultation set up.
Very good. So, Katie, we will add those URLs, those website addresses to these videos. And thanks again for your time and sharing your story, and all the very best with Cultivate.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Bye for now.